Greetings, Earthlings. First, let me start off with saying that this will not be a whispered episode. I am going to try out a new format and see who responds the best to it. So look at this as a pilot episode of something I might create more of. So if you like this, remember 99% of you guys are not my followers, so please subscribe, hit like and all of that jazz. You know the drill by now. And with all of that out of the way, I am going to read to you for the first time, or at least for my first time, The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. I will start, as I always do with books like this, by reading the backside. The greatest sagas are written in blood. Set in a brand new Norse-inspired world and packed with myth, magic, and bloody vengeance. The Shadow of the Gods begins an epic fantasy saga from best-selling author John Gwynne. Visceral, heartbreaking, and unputdownable. J. Christoph, New York Times best-selling author of Empire of the Vampire. Yeah, and more stuff like that. I was more looking for the short, too long, didn't read version, but it doesn't seem like that is here. Alright, page 1. The Shadow of the Gods. Praise for the Shadow of the Gods. A satisfying... yeah, that's just more of the same that we read on the back side. Oh, here we come. Here is the actual content. For Caroline, my love, my heart, my everything. Always. And here is a map of the world. There is a sort of peninsula coming down from the north. This continent is called Vigrid, I think it says in Norse runes here. Right below that, there is a big flat called the Battle Plain. And then we have a city called Oskutred that is on the border of a forest. To the west of it we have a mountainside called Eldrafell. And through the land there is a river called the Vaser Pit, I think it's spelled that way. And I have to laugh at the next southern mountain border, which is called the Boneback Mountains. I'm sorry, I'm 12 years old in my own mind. Yeah, I'm not gonna read all of these stories. I might post pictures of this map on my site later so that you can see for yourself. The next page. There comes the shadow dark dragon flying. The gleaming serpent up from dark of moon hills. He flies over the plain, and in his pinions he carries corpses. Chapter 1. Orca. The year 297 of Fridarol, the Age of Peace. Death is a part of life, Orca whispered into her son's ear. Even though Becca's arm was drawn back, the ash spear gripped tight in his small white-knuckled fist, and the spearhead aimed at the reindeer in front of them. She could see the hesitation in his eyes, in the set of his jaw. He is too gentle for this world of pain, Orca thought. She opened her mouth to scold him, but a hand touched her arm. A huge hand, where Brecca's was small, rough-skinned where Brecca's was smooth. Wait, Torkel breathed through his braided beard. That was a tongue twister. Breathed through his braided beard. Okay. A cold misting of breath. He stood to her left, solid and huge as a boulder. muscles bunched in Orca's jaw, hard words already in her throat. Hard words are needed for this hard world. But she held her tongue. Spring sunlight dappled the ground through soft swaying branches, reflecting brightly from patches of rimed snow, winter's last hoarfrost kiss on this high mountain woodland. A dozen reindeer stood grazing in a glade, a thick-antlered bull watching over the herd of cows and calves as they chewed and scratched moss and lichen from trunks and boulders. A shift in Brecca's eyes, an indrawn breath that he held, followed by a burst of explosive movement. His hips twisting, his arms moving. The spear left his fist. A hiss as sharp iron sliced through the air. A flush of pride in Orca's chest. It was well thrown. As soon as the spear had left Brecca's grip, she knew it would hit his mark. In the same heartbeat that Brecca loosed his spear, the reindeer he had chosen looked up from the trunk it had been scraping lichen from. Its ears twitched and it leaped forwards, the herd around it breaking into motion, bounding and swerving around trees. Brecca's spear slammed into the trunk, the shaft quivering. A moment later there was a crashing from the east, the sound of branches cracking, and a form burst from the undergrowth. Huge, slate-furred and long-clawed, exploding into the glade. The reindeer fled in all directions as the beast loped among them. Oblivious to all around it, blood pulsed from a swarm of wounds across its body, long teeth slick. Its red tongue lolling, and then it was gone, disappearing into the forest gloom. "What was that?" Brecca hissed, looking up at his mother and father, wide eyes shifting from Orca to Thorkel. "A fell wolf," Thorkel grunted as he broke into motion. The stealth of the hunt forgotten. He pushed through the undergrowth into the glade, a thick-shafted spear in one fist, branches snapping, Orca and Brecca following. Thorkel dropped to one knee, tugged a glove off with his teeth and touched his fingertips to droplets of the wolf's blood, brushing them across the tip of his tongue. He spat, rose and followed the trail of wolf blood to the edge of the glade, then stood there peering into the murk. Brecca walked up to his spear, the blade half sunk into a spine tree, and tried to pull it free. His body strained, but the spear didn't move. He looked up at Orca, grey-green eyes in a pale, muddied face, a straight nose and a strong jaw framed with a crow-black hair, so much like his father, and the opposite of her. Apart from his eyes, he had Orca's eyes. "I missed," he said, shoulders slumping. Orca gripped the shaft in her gloved hand and tugged the spear free. "Yes," she said, and handed Brecca his spear, half an arm shorter than hers and Thorkel's. "It was not your fault," Thorkel said from the glade's edge. Sorry. He was still staring into the gloom, a thick braid of black, grey-streaked hair poking from beneath his woolen, knoll-binding cap, his nose twitching. The fell wolf startled them. "Why didn't it kill any of those reindeer?" Brecca asked as he took his short spear from Orca. Thorkel lifted his hand, showing blooded fingertips. It was wounded, not thinking about its supper. "What did that to a fell wolf?" Brecca asked. A silence. Orca strode to the opposite end of the glade, her spear ready as she regarded the dark hole in the undergrowth from where the wolf had emerged. She paused, cocked her head, a faint sound drifting through the woodland like mists. Screams. Brecca joined her, He gripped his spear with both hands and pointed into the darkness. Thorkel, Orca grunted, twisting to look over her shoulder at her husband. He was still staring after the wounded wolf, with a last lingering look and a shake of his fur-draped shoulders. He turned and strode towards her. More screams, faint and distant. Orca shared a look with Thorkel. Asgrim's steading lies that way, she said. Horek, Brekka said, referring to Asgrim's son. Brekka had played with him on the beach of Fellur, on the occasions when Orca and Thorkel had visited the village to trade for provisions. Another scream, faint and ethereal through the trees. Best we take a look, Thorkel muttered. Heya, Orca grunted her agreement. Their breath misted about them in clouds as they worked their way through the pine woods, the ground thick and soft with needles. It was spring, signs of new life in the world below, but winter still clung to these wooded hills like a hunched old warrior refusing to let go of his past. They walked in file, Orca leading, her eyes constantly shifting between the wolf-carved path they were following and the deep shadows around them. Old ice-crusted snow crunched underfoot as trees opened up and they stepped onto a ridge. Steep cliffs falling away sharply to the west, ragged strips of cloud drifting across the open sky below them. Orca glanced down and saw reed-thin columns of hearth-fire smoke rising from Fellur, far below. The fishing village sat nestled on the eastern edge of a deep blue-black fjord, the calm waters shimmering in the pale sun. Gulls swirled and called. Orca, Thorkel said, and she stopped, turned. Thorkel was unstoppering a leather water bottle and handing it to Brekka, who, despite the chill, was flushed and sweating. His legs aren't as long as yours, Thorkel smiled through his beard, the scar from the cheek to jaw giving his mouth a twist. Orca looked back up the trail they were following and listened. She had heard no more screams for a while now, so she nodded to Thorkel and reached for her own water bottle. They sat on a boulder for a few moments, looking out over the land of green and blue, like gods upon the crest of the world. To the south, the fjord beyond Fellur spilled into the sea, a ragged coastline curling west and then south, ribbed and scarred with deep fjords and inlets. Iron-grey clouds bunched over the sea, glowing with the threat of a snow. Far to the north, the green-sloped, snow-topped mountain range coiled across the land, filling the horizon from east to west. Here and there a towering cliff face gleamed, the old bone roots of the mountains from this distance just a flash of grey. Tell me the serpent Snaka again, Brekka said as they all stared at the mountains. Orca said nothing, eyes fixed on the undulating peaks. If I were to tell that saga tale, little one, your nose and fingers would freeze, and when you stood to walk away, your toes would snap like ice, Thorkel said. Brekka looked at him with his grey-green eyes. Ah, you know I cannot say no to that look, Thorkel huffed, breath misting. All right then, the short telling. He tugged off the knoll-binding cap on his head and scratched his scalp. All that you can see before you is Vigrid, the battle plain, the land of shattered realms. Each step of land between the sea and those mountains and 100 leagues beyond them. That is where the gods fought and died, and Snaka was the father of them all. Some say the greatest of them.